the aviation industry is not the most important topic when it comes to the Iran war, but it is still an important industry for people and businesses around the world. In this video, I talked to Marina Efthymiou from Dublin City University, who shares her insights about the effect of the Iran war on Gulf carriers and carriers outside the Gulf region. I know that you have some close contacts to aviation stakeholders in the region that is currently affected by this terrible war. More than terrible, actually. So maybe you could just share a little bit about your background and how you got to know the region. Yeah,
of course. Yeah, so it's indeed like a lot of friends also are still in the Middle East. Some have left, but many of them have also remained. So I think one of my first trips in Saudi Arabia, for example, was back in 2018. That was before women were allowed on their own capacity to travel there. So that's when I went there to deliver an executive training for Saudi, and I have been there many times after that. And then we have very close links with Princess Noura University in Saudi Arabia. And obviously we all know UAE and Qatar and all of those mega hubs connecting traffic there. So we have been all monitoring and following up what's happening in this part of the world. It's devastating overall. Any war, everybody's losing from a war. But I think with this war, the whole aviation system is losing massively, both in terms of disruptions, especially at the beginning of the conflict. We saw a lot of people being stranded in Southeast Asia because they were transiting via Middle East. A lot of people stranded in UAE. People have booked their holidays and they didn't know if their flight be cancelled or not. So a lot of disruption in that side, but also now with the fuel prices and shortages of fuel, it's scary stuff there, Achim.
I was just recently looking. I tried to avoid looking at the ticket prices, but then I looked at it and I saw that compared to before, because I live in Hong Kong, but my family is not in Hong Kong. So I'm flying between Hong Kong and Berlin many times. So I just for information, I checked the prices and I saw that just for one leg outbound, the price is already twice as high as the whole trip before.
Yeah.
So... yeah. And it's no surprise for several reasons. Before they couldn't cross the Russian airspace, and now they also can cross the airspace of the Middle East. So it's a big detour, and also fuel prices are much higher, and that means it's just the costs are much higher. And also, and this is something that you have mentioned, the war substantially reduced the capacity of the Gulf carriers, and they are huge.
Yeah.
This means that costs go up, capacity goes down, and of course this affects prices. We are economists, right? This is, we understand that. And this is what's happening right now. But would you say, how well do you know, how are the operations right now? Are they, in the very beginning, of course, basically everything stopped. How is the situation right now?
I think it's not the same with all the Gulf carriers. Before I mentioned that, I think also this exposed the structural dependence we have on the Middle East for passengers and cargo. The interesting thing there is that those carriers are not affected in the same way. So if we look, for example, at Qatar Airways, their airspace remained closed for much longer. So they're operated at the peak crisis, they operated 20% capacity. Now they're at 35-40% capacity. I was reading somewhere that they have 20 aircraft parked in Spain just to protect their expensive assets. So that airspace is significantly restricted. So they haven't recovered. Then when we look at UAE and then you look at Emirates or Etihad, So Emirates had maybe the most impressive recovery from all of them because their FAR opened in a controlled way, so the specific routes that they can follow within their airspace. So they opened up very fast, and they were quick also with rescheduling the routes, looking after their passengers, looking after their crews, having this flexibility to build up the confidence for the travelers. So they have not fully recovered, but maybe, I don't know, maybe 75% they have recovered.
That's...
Yeah, so you can now book tickets. They return back in Ireland, so you can now book a flight from Dublin to UAE, to Dubai with the Emirates. Etihad, not exactly the same route as Emirates. They operate a heavier hub and spoke network, and they're of a smaller size, so they were a little bit slower also to recover. So I'm not exactly sure to what extent they have recovered, but I think there might be something around 50%, more or less. Then the smaller carriers, Fly Dubai, Gulf Air, Jazeera Airways, they have also been significantly compromised, and some of them, they have been moving operations to Saudi Arabia. So different levels of impact, but I think it's influenced by a little bit the business model, a little bit the airspace restrictions, and a little bit the size also of the carrier.
Oh, this is actually, I didn't expect that the recovery would be so quick, to be honest. I had also the discussion with Ian Douglas, and he said, it's just too expensive. It's just too much. You have all these assets, and people want to travel, and you can, I guess also their ticket prices will not be as they have been before.
It depends.
Really? Have you? Yeah?
I haven't booked a flight, and I'm not planning to book a flight, but even on their approach for the recovery, so Qatar is preserving cash, so they're not flying like much. Then Etihad is reducing the fares in order to build up confidence and entice people. So they're doing what they did back in 9/11. Then Emirates hasn't significantly, to the level of Etihad, reduced their fares. So they have preserved that, but still they are lower than Turkish and lower than Lufthansa and British Airways, where we're looking at an alternative hub. So I have friends looking to book flights from India to Dublin, and the price going via Middle East is 1/3 of the price versus going via Frankfurt or going via Istanbul airport. But again, within the Gulf carriers, there are differences on the approach that they take on reducing the fare to entice passengers. And then the UAE overall is putting a lot of effort with content creators to build up the confidence and say, it is safe, we have all those systems, keep traveling to us, keep spending in our destination, and keep tourism moving.
That's impressive, actually. And also, I mean, I am sure that passengers will be anxious, and then if you would, on top of this, also increase the ticket prices, but for them also the oil prices matter. I mean, we're economists, right? We know the opportunity cost, which means that if you don't use the fuel yourself, you can sell it. So basically, it's the market price, no matter whether you are in a country that is oil producing, oil exporting or not. It doesn't really matter, because the market price is what the market price is, and that determines the cost of you using fuel. And so also the cost for them are higher, but people are anxious, and then they sort of try to comfort people by of course, having all these security, I guess, measures that they try to ensure that their operations are safe. And on top of this, also not having too much of an increase in the ticket price. And I'm not so sure about the routing, because usually the Gulf carriers, one of the reasons I feel they are so successful, have been so successful over the last decades, is just their geographical position. Right now, of course, there is the war, the problem, but in terms of network efficiency, that I think is still a factor and could also help them keep the basically cost and ticket prices low.
Yeah, their point of centrality for sure. They connect Europe with Asia and Africa and Australia. So the geography, you cannot compete so easily on that. But maybe Istanbul is around there. It's not very far. So it still also has similar centrality and bidirectional hub to some extent. Not bidirectional, actually multidirectional hub to compete very well in terms of geography with Middle East.
But I think the traditional incumbent European and other airlines based in US or based in Europe, they just cannot. They're not substitutes. It's really like the Gulf carriers. They do have this advantage, geographical advantage, which helps them. Which is also why I feel they are just offering different products, and they're not easily they cannot be really replaced by the other airlines. Yeah.
They're trying though. They're trying, like Lufthansa is trying, and they also made comments about this dependence we have.
That's right.
And ask for subsidized routes, and they start all of them adding capacity. But indeed, Achim, I fully agree with you. The geography advantage that they have, it's very difficult for European carriers to copy. Even with the newer aircraft technology, because I don't want to be in a flight that it's 15 hours going to Australia. I really want to have a stop in the middle to stretch my legs.
That's right. So, so what this establishes is basically that the Gulf carriers are an important part of the aviation global landscape. I mean, and they are contributing to, they're rivals for some airlines, but for the passengers, this is just, and I guess also cargo businesses, this is just, they are important. They are just offering good services. So then the question would be, any thoughts on how the current situation may be changing the future of the Gulf carriers? Are you worried that there will be that they will have some long-term effect, or do you think like after Iran war over, then just business as usual?
I don't think there's going to be any reshuffling, if that's what you mean, mergers and acquisitions in that nature, because they do have significant government backing behind them. So even though some of them might have bigger issues in terms of cash than others, like Qatar, strong dependence on oil, UAE, less dependence on oil, then Saudi Arabia now making a big step with the Vision 2030 and the new airports and the new airline. But still, all of those carriers, they have government backing behind them. So don't think there's going to be a reshuffling of that nature. And then the effect, obviously, they are significantly loss-making currently with their assets being grounded for many of them, and also passenger revenue being significantly cut. But I do believe that because of this government banking and also the point of centrality, and they're quick in rebuilding infrastructure, that will not create any major problems for them to recover. The only thing that I think needs to be a little bit monitored a little bit is those countries depend a lot on expats. And we have seen an exit from expats with a lot of repatriation flights. Not everybody has left, but there are a number of people living and working from home or hesitant to go back with their families. So that might have a short impact in rebuilding the infrastructure, because some of the infrastructure has or will be damaged, and also bringing back, the glamour we had before with UAE as a tourist destination and as a hub and spoke network.
And this is just because of, the threat of of having any kind of military attack, and
that's why some of the aircrafts have been moved. Wherever they could. So that reminds you a little bit
they
of
are easy.
9/11,
I guess they are easy
the
targets. They're easy targets. It's like a civilian aircraft, and they're easy targets. So.
They're mentioned in the news. They create intimidation and expose vulnerabilities then to the country level. Easy targets, as you said.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope that you are right. I mean, that that would be a good step into, just having some normal relationship. And I feel aviation is a sector that can contribute to understand, I think we are a global community, and I think the aviation sector is exceptional in contributing to such a mindset. And so having the Gulf carriers, the position diminished, I think that would definitely weaken the sector, the attractivity, and what it can offer to passengers, and also in terms of cargo. So I hope that you're right, and also Ian actually is right, that once hopefully the fighting will be over, then we can get back to the state in which, traveling people can travel to the places they want at prices that are, affordable. And, let's cross the fingers.
I don't worry about the Gulf carriers. I worry about the European carriers.
Really? Why? Why are you so worried about the European?
Yeah, I worry a lot.
Why?
Because some of them haven't hedged. They don't have very deep pockets. We don't know for how long this will go for. They have sold tickets 60 days ago maybe. Or the tickets that the flights that we fly now, they have been sold a month ago with a price of $100, whereas now the price is $195. So I worry about the European carriers, that their pockets are not that deep, and they don't have government backing in many ways in order to sustain such an effect. 25-30% of the total operating expenses being fuel. So when the fuel doubles, they cut capacity. A lot of destinations
That's right.
will suffer.
I mean, you're right. I mean, we're talking about the Gulf carrier. We have been talking about the Gulf carriers, but and of course they are the most directly affected by the military actions, by the war. But the increase in the fuel price, and some people would say, what we are seeing right now is still muted because we still have the reserves. The ships, when they leave the Strait of Hormuz, it's not that they leave and next day they will arrive. They will, it takes, I don't know, maybe a month, maybe 2 months sailing. So once the war extends in terms of the period, then beyond that time period, then this is where we really will be seeing all the oil problems and the surges in the oil prices, and that could, and then of course we don't need to talk about all the facilities, refineries, oil fields, that have been destroyed. I think I think the French Macron saying that it was like around 30 or 40% a few days ago of the refinery, of the capacity destroyed. That's not something that you can easily rebuild. But of course, this is, I think this is...
Unless you're Delta, that they have bought a refinery years ago.
I see. But the US airlines, they didn't hedge at all. European airlines, they still have hedged. But my understanding is that the US airlines didn't hedge at all. So when it comes to the impact of the oil price, I think in average, European airlines are still in a better position compared to the US airlines.
I think Ryanair hedged 85% of their fuel at $77, so they're doing really well on that. American, United, none of them have hedged. Also, some Europeans, they haven't hedged. SAS hasn't hedged. They canceled 1,000 flights in April alone. But I think the point that you mentioned earlier on, the refining capacity, and also while a number of countries, they do have reserves, like China has 1.2 billion barrels in reserves, that does not mean that they will have aviation fuel. I read somewhere that France has 7% aviation fuel. Will that be enough? How will there be any rationing of fuel even for airlines? Will they be canceling flights? So that got me a little bit worried, especially as an expat living abroad. That got me a little bit worried what kind of impact it will have. One is the price, but the second is cancellations due to shortages. So hopefully that will not go for long.
I was just recently reading in the news that the Chinese didn't export any jet fuel anymore. Apparently, they have been exporting. Again, I mean, this is just something that I was reading in the news, but it sort of seems like plausible. And so
China,
neighboring Asian countries felt like, oh my goodness, how are we going to fly?
Yeah.
So the situation is not going to be better.
Yeah. China, Thailand, South Korea, they all banned their exports. Very rightly so. They need to cover their own needs before they start exporting. And with the administration from the orange man in the other side of the sea here, it's so unpredictable. You know, you don't know what will happen.
No, the only thing you know is that something terrible is going to happen. That's unfortunately the only valid prediction that you can make. But what will it be? That's difficult to tell. But
Probably my visa not getting renewed from the US after the comments I make.
Are you in the US right now?
No, I'm in Dublin. But I mean, like, my EST application for flying over might not be renewed. I have made some very lovely comments. And you worry sometimes, you know, because you hear from friends and colleagues that many are trying to fly via Dublin now because we have the pre-clearance. So at least if they're denied boarding, they're at European soil. And you hear stories about scrutiny on their social media posts and comments that they have done and visas not being renewed or been given.
Yeah, I mean...
But that's the least, of the problems we currently have. My visa not being renewed.
All right, Marina. So I think maybe we should have another chat or so about this in about a month. Maybe there will be some updates because, you know, I can tell you have some good, you know, just understanding of these markets. And again, I feel it's important to share some of those insights because it is of interest to us, but I think there is also a broader audience here who really would like to know what does it mean for aviation, basically, for the next trip, no matter where they want to go. And the answer is, I would say, not good news. The situation is not soon going to be better. If anything, I feel there are real risks about, what you said, airlines, European airlines, just being in big trouble. And so soon, actually, again, after COVID. COVID is not too long ago, actually, which has been a major hit. And now again, so the aviation industry is quite vulnerable in that respect.
But resilient, Achim, resilient.
Also resilient. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
It is true.
Great. Thanks, and great
Thank you
initiatives
so much, Maria.
with those podcasts, Achim. Great initiatives with this podcast, Achim. I think it's great what you're doing, bringing different experts, sharing their experience and sharing knowledge. So well done for doing that. I'm sure it's a lot of hard work behind it, and thank you for doing that.